What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Bryce Gelman here, back with another YouTube video. It's been a while. It's been a minute. Today we're going to be discussing the New York Giants and some positive ones. I understand it's a time to be negative about John Mara, to be negative about Brian Dable, to be negative about Daniel Jones. Today we're going to be trying to focus on the positives with this upcoming matchup against the Browns in Week 3, and there are some. I'm going to be outlining 5 with an extra one. It counts as it's 5. 5 positives going into this game against the Browns. Giants are getting 6.5 points. So the Browns are looked at as a big favorite in this game, and for good reason. I mean, the Giants are 0-2. They've looked incompetent. They've looked like organizationally that they're a mess. And when teams look like that, when teams get the short end of the stick in a game you should have won, that's what happens. Is going forward, your team starts to get disrespected in a way by Vegas, by the media, by casuals, because you lost games that you should have won. And that is an organizational thing. That's on coaching. That's on incompetence among all of those groups. So going into this game, there's one quarterback in the NFC East who's got a PFF rating above 60. At 64.4, that guy is none other than Daniel Jones. Every other quarterback in the NFC East is below 60. Daniel Jones, terrible in his first game against the Vikings. He played a classic Daniel Jones game. He looked unsure of himself. He looked like he was still a rookie, even though this is his 6th year. Maybe he was just rust. Maybe he had to shake that off. Against the Commanders, a team in which he was 5-1-1 going into the game, now 5-2-1, of course, after the loss. He played a pretty solid game. He was not the reason why the Giants lost the game. He made the correct throws. He fed Malik Neighbors, knowing that Malik Neighbors would help them have a chance to win the game. Of course, they didn't win the game. Daniel Jones played with himself. He played a good game. And now he's the number 1 quarterback in PFF rating in the NFC East. So that's number 1. Daniel Jones may be a better quarterback than we all expected. I'm not going to go there yet. I kind of retract that statement. I'm not going there. All right. That's going to be in 3 or 4 weeks. If he's not benched by that time, then we'll have that discussion. Not yet. They still play the Cowboys next Thursday. If he puts up a stinker, which we all expect him to, then we'll have that discussion. Okay. All right. Next, number 2, Devin Singletary has been really solid. He's making $15 million less guaranteed than Saquon Barkley, and everyone wants to put it out there how good Saquon's been, how idiotic Joe Shane was in not giving him the money that he expected, that he thought he deserved, that the Eagles eventually gave him, which is like $25 million guaranteed, potentially $37.75 million over 3 years, which is just an exorbitant amount of money for a team that looks like this. Even with Devin Singletary as good as he's been, and he leads all qualified NFL running backs with a 46.2% avoided tackle rate. He's also leading the NFL in running backs in pass blocking stats at 22 and pass blocking great with a minimum of 10 snaps. I mean, what more can you ask of him? With the money that he's making, he's a really solid running back. He is. And you can't give him all the credit. It's not just him. It's not just his legs. We're going to get into that in a second, which you could expect. I'm going to spoil it for you. We're going to talk about the offensive line. Of course, that's been a positive. How long has it been since the Giants have had a competent offensive line? And they finally do. We'll get into that. Devin Singletary has looked really solid. Analytically, also he passes the eye test with these broken tackles. He had a really solid game against the Commanders on the ground. Devin Singletary was a great signing. He looks like one of the steals of free agency. And it just begs the question, like, why are the Giants as bad as they are when they've made such good signings? We'll get into another one a little bit later. But Devin Singletary has been a positive. And going into this game against the Browns, another thing we're going to get into, the Browns defense. which is number 1 in yards allowed last year, has not looked the same this year. It's going to be a good opportunity for Devin Singletary to have another solid game. So that's number 2. We're just rapid fire going through these. Going to talk about the later ones a little bit more. Number 3 is Drew Phillips. I mean, this guy, what more can you say about Drew Phillips? 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 1 forced fumble on the year. I think he ranks 5th among all rookies in PFF grade. 3rd round pick. 3rd round pick, nickelback. This guy is for real. Looks like one of the steals of the draft. As much as you want to hate on Joe Schoen for screwing up the 2022 draft, we talked about it in One Giant Step. If you're just tuning in now and you have no idea who I am, they're like, who the hell is this kid? I host a podcast with Sean Morash of WFAN. He's a 3rd host on Evan and Tiki. And we discussed this at length, how good Drew Phillips has been, how he is one of the steals of the draft. And how in 2022, a lot of people give Joe Schoen, they don't cut Joe Schoen any slack. He took over. A lot of those scouts were still remaining from the Gettleman era. He fired a lot of those people. They screwed that draft up big time. You can't deflect all the blame from Joe Schoen from that draft because he still made those decisions. Yes, it may have been on different information that he would have been getting had it been his own scouts, but he was the one who eventually made those calls, and he whiffed big time on those 2 guys. I digress. I'm trying to focus on the positives here. It's very tough when the Giants are 0-2. Losing 2 games they needed to win. But we're focusing on the positives. We are. We're doing that right now. We're staying optimistic about this team. Drew Phillips is unbelievable. He really is. Had it not been for that phantom hold that the refs called in the 4th quarter of the Commanders game, in which Ryan Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau would have split their first sack of the year. First off, the Giants would have likely won the game. Second off, we'd be looking at Drew Phillips' overall game as almost flawless, you could say. He blew up a bunch of different screens. He looked solid in run support, which the Giants did not do a good job at last week against the Commanders, with Brian Robinson just running all over them. And Austin Eckler looking like 2018 Austin Eckler. Drew Phillips is really solid. And I'm very excited for his future on this team. Like where in the past the Giants really made a solid selection late on in the draft? It's been a while. When you look back to 2022, how many of those guys they would find? Josh Zudu. Like we could go band for band. We can go name for name with those guys that they've whipped on in recent years in the late rounds. But as of right now, Tyler Nubin, by extension, he's looked somewhat solid for where he was selected. Drew Phillips just looks solid overall in general. And you see a lot of talking heads, a lot of national media people putting attention on Drew Phillips. Pretty sure Baldy's breakdowns, Ryan Baldinger, who's great, one of the best in the business at breaking down football. Pretty sure he did a video on him saying how good Drew Phillips has looked. And he has. He really has. I mean, he's only, and here's the thing. You may think he's only been really good in run support, which he has been. 14 total yards he's allowed. 14 total receiving yards allowed this year from Drew Phillips. As much hate as we'd like to give Joe Schoen about his supposedly screwed up draft picks, even though this year is looking solid. Malik Neighbors is a stud. Tyler Nubin looks great. Drew Phillips is great. Theo Johnson, you'd like to see more of. This was a home run pick. Home run pick. He's got a great eye for play recognition. He's great in run support. And 14 total yards allowed. What more can you ask of a rookie? A rookie. And number 4, I teased it before. That is the offensive line. And Carmen Bursillo is looking, speaking of home runs, he looks like a home run hire. The Giants poach him from the Raiders. He comes over, signs, helps maybe have a hand in the Giants signing Illuminor, their right tackle, who's looked really good. the value on his contract is looking better by the day. They also bring in Van Roten. So Carmen Basillo gets some of his guys over from the Raiders. And look at how good this offensive line looks. How long has it been since the Giants had a competent offensive line? Daniel Jones has 3 seconds now to throw the ball. Top 10 in the league. Top 10. I can list off all the stats for you. 9th in the league, the Giants are in pass blocking. Just let's take a look back at last year. This time last year, how bad this offensive line was. How many different guys the Giants were trying at each position. They, of course, lost Andrew Thomas in the first game of the season after his false start and running the ball on the block kick, losing him for multiple weeks. They signed Justin Pugh off the couch. You think this team needs Justin Pugh? No, absolutely not. They do not need any random free agents at this point in the year. And knock on wood, hopefully these guys can stay healthy. Someone we need to give our flowers to is the Giants' biggest signing this offseason in free agency. It's Jon Runyan, who at right guard has been nothing short of unbelievable. Nothing short of unbelievable. He's allowing pressures on 2.4% of his dropbacks. 2.4%. He didn't allow a single pressure in the game against the Commanders. As much as we'd like to hate on Joe Shane for screwing up picks and screwing up signings and not re-signing Saquon Barkley, look at where that money went. If the Giants re-signed Saquon Barkley, you think they would have had enough money to sign Jon Runyan? Probably not. They saved $15 million guaranteed signing Singletary instead of Saquon Barkley. They brought in a guy like Jon Runyan, who again, 0 pressures on all of his dropbacks against the Commanders. Got to give our flowers to Jon Runyan. And I'm looking forward to this game, the offensive line. One guy, of course, piques your interest. And that's Myles Garrett, who is a force of nature. He's a force to be reckoned with. And, he's had 2 strip sacks, I believe, at this point in the year. He's going to be matched up against Andrew Thomas. Myles Garrett had not practiced all week up until today, in which he was limited with a leg injury. Andrew Thomas being, I believe he's a top 2, top 3 tackle in the league, left or right tackle. It's like Trent Williams, Penei Sewell, and Andrew Thomas. You can mix those 3 up however you want. Andrew Thomas is there. He's going to have a tall task of blocking Myles Garrett. And we're going to see how Myles Garrett's leg holds up. He's still been really good. He's been laboring this entire year. That clearly hasn't stopped him. He's an unbelievable talent. So I think that, the fact that Myles Garrett may not be at 100%, and also the fact that he's going to be matched up against Andrew Thomas is certainly a good sign and another positive. And let's talk about the Browns. Let's shift gears to the Browns. Let's talk about what they are and what the team that they are. 1-1. They got destroyed by the Cowboys in week 1, which the Cowboys put up 30-plus points. I mean, the Browns' offense does not look good. And you could kind of tie that all back together to the quarterback that they have, who has not looked the same since whatever happened. His injury, since the Browns traded 4 or 5 first-round picks for the guy, 3 first-round picks, gave him the most money, guaranteed money in NFL history, looking like the worst trade, the worst contract in NFL history. The guy sucks. You can't say it's rust anymore at this point. He's had plenty of starts since he missed a season plus. The excuses have run out. We're going to get to Deshaun Watson. You know how bad he's been. You don't need me to sit here and explain to you why he's been a terrible football player. You could see it with your own 2 eyes. The Browns defense is still not entirely hit its stride. Again, as I mentioned, they got smacked by the Cowboys, a team in which got smacked itself against the Saints. And I don't want to sell the Saints short because they've looked unbelievable. But they really did a number on the Cowboys last week. And that's the same Browns defense. that allowed 33 points or whatever it was to the Cowboys. The Browns defense has no takeaways this year. They ranked 5th in turnovers last year, 3rd in interceptions last year. I'm not going to say it's been 2 weeks. I'm not going to come out here and say that they can't get 3 or 4 takeaways in this game against the Giants. They are looking for a statement. I said this to Sean on this week's One Giant Step. Again, check that out wherever you get your podcast. The WFA and YouTube, it's everywhere. I retweeted it on my Twitter at Bryce Gelman. You can check that out wherever you get your podcast. We discussed this, how the Giants need to win this game. And Sean said is like the Giants need to force their own turnovers. And I said, I'm like, listen, that was his, like we talk at the end of each show, we do fantasy versus reality. We talk about one guy in fantasy that we like to play, and I always go Malik Neighbors because why not? And then the reality of the game and how it's going to go. And he said that. And I said, the Giants, they need to just make sure that the Browns don't come in looking for this ultimate statement win. They're 1-1. They're not 0-2. They're in a good spot in their division. In one of the best divisions in football. The Ravens are 0-2. They're a bunch of, it's the Giants need to make sure that they go in and they don't allow an absolute beatdown. Keep the game close. The Browns defense is not good enough to run up the score. You look at the weapons they have. Who's throwing them the ball? Why does it matter? Their backfield, Jerome Ford and Deonta Foreman, who are splitting carries. It's not a sexy backfield. Healthy Nick Chubb isn't in the backfield. There's no reason why the Giants defense could keep this game close. It's all going to come down to the Giants offense. Going up against a Browns defense, which 2 weeks ago got smacked. They played relatively well last week against the Jaguars. Listen, the Jaguars are no offensive juggernaut. Trevor Lawrence has really struggled in commanding an explosive offense. We haven't really seen that over the course of his career. That has not been their calling card. Their defenses have been more solid in the offense. It will all come down to how well the Giants offense plays against this defense. As I mentioned before, the Browns defense last year, 1st in yards allowed. They're nowhere near that this year. And the last positive about all this, and I mentioned it before, is the fact that the Browns employ Deshaun Watson as their quarterback. At this point in the year, it's only been 2 weeks, you're beginning to think, is Jameis Winston a better option at quarterback than the guy we're paying $45, $50 million a year? The guy that we gave up multiple first-round picks for, the guy that we mortgaged our future against for. Deshaun Watson sucks. Objectively not a good football player. The Giants' defensive line needs to get to Deshaun. I am sick and tired of watching Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau put up absolute zero performances. Zeros. You could see it on the stat sheet. 0 sacks, 0 pressures, 0 quarterback hits. And you could see it when you watch the games where Dexter Lawrence is getting double and triple teamed every single snap. Kayvon and Brian Burns have one-on-ones on the edges. They have not been able to get to the quarterback. The excuses have run out for these two guys, especially Kayvon Thibodeau. And the Giants are more tied to Brian Burns, of course, which they gave up draft capital and one of their biggest salaries on the team, $30+ million a year. Both have not played well enough. This is a statement game for the Browns. It could also be a statement game for the Giants' offensive line. They go into Cleveland and they pull off what, according to the sports books, would be an upset win, a major upset win at +6.5. I think the Giants go out and they lose this game. I think that everything that's going on, the bigger picture with the Giants organization, with the incompetence, the kicking situation last week, is going to be too much. This team is going to find new ways to lose each week. I have no hope. I know I just mentioned 6 positives, 5 positives. Doesn't mean that I think they're going to win this game. I'm just saying it could be closer than people think. The Giants can win this game. If they're able to put it together, they absolutely can win this game. And go into the Cowboys game on Thursday Night Football next week with a head of steam. That is not out of the question. I know I could collectively say, on behalf of all Giants fans, we'd love to see that. We'd love to not have to hang our heads. Nothing to hang our heads on with this Giants team. Have conversations with people and have to just admit and be objective about it. Yeah, we suck. Because that's what people say to us. It's like, what other talking points are there about the Giants right now? None. Realistic. They suck. Daniel Jones is terrible. Flip the script. Change the narrative. This Giants team is better than their record. They are. Their offensive line finally looks good. They've got the names on the defensive line. Yes, their secondary is god-awful. But has it really been exposed that much? The Vikings game, okay, fine. But against the Commanders, they held their own. It was in the run game where the Commanders did most of their damage. The reason why the Giants lost the game were a multitude of missed tackles, some bad penalties, and Kayvon and Brian Burns being absolute non-factors. Change the narrative. Go out there, win this game. Those are the Giants' positives. You enjoy this. Leave a subscription down below. Leave a like as well, a comment. I'd love to know what you think about this game. Do you think the Giants have a chance? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to respond to your comments. I'd love to get you in on this conversation. And I do live streams multiple a week. You could get in that conversation as well on X and on YouTube as well. If you subscribe to me, you'll get a notification that I'm going live. So if you enjoy this, then please show your support through that. So I'm Bryce Gelman. Let's go Giants. Hopefully they can get a win. If not, it's going to be another miserable one Giants step next week. We're just going to have to break down yet another loss. And I don't want that to be the case. I know you out there, the fans, do not want that to be the case as well. So praying for a Giants win. We'll speak to you all next week. Have a good weekend, everyone.